By having just one olive tree in your backyard, you could be enjoying the most premium extra virgin olive oil and potentially producing enough olive oil to last you the whole year until the next olive season. And the best part is you don't have to process the olives yourself. You can pick them and send them to a local small batch processor such as Apulia, which is where we're at today. We're going to learn more about this community press, see exactly how the olive oil is made, and everything that you might need to know if you're thinking of picking your olives and send them to an olive oil producer. And make sure you stick around to the end because we're going to have a special tasting of olive oil that's getting pressed right now. So it is going to be the freshest possible. Also, by the way, this is Ceilidh. The Irish spelling of the name confused me too. Ceilidh and husband Charlie have been doing this for 15 years. They were initially just weekend olive farmers and they were faced with the challenge of no small batch processor nearby. And they were fortunate enough to be able to afford a machine, and ever since they've been helping others also process their olive oil. They hold workshops and they help new olive growers with any concerns or issues that they might be having. Discuss like when to pick the fruit
is when 60 to 70% of the fruit has turned or is turning purple on the skin. That will give you a good balance between oil yield and the interesting flavours in the oil.
We were discussing how depending on where the tree is positioned in your backyard or wherever you have the tree does affect the ripening, how fast it ripens.
Yeah, so the microclimate that your tree lives in will also very much affect the ripening process. So, you know, if one side gets a lot of sun and the other's in full shade, it's going to make a difference. If it's on the south side of the building and it doesn't get any sun at all, then, you know, it's going to take a lot longer.
So 5 important things to keep in mind if I have a couple of backyard olives and I'm planning on picking them and bringing them to a small batch processor.
The first would be contact your processor before you pick. Even 3 or 4 days can make a massive difference in terms of the quality of the fruit. The second one is don't wash your fruit. Try not to pick in the rain and and don't wash the fruit before you bring it to us. It's going to start going mouldy a lot quicker. If there's any bloom on the fruit, like we showed, bloom, it's a fungal. That's one of the reasons why we say get your fruit to the processor within that 48-hour period, because as soon as that's picked off the tree and piled into a bucket or a basket, it's going to heat up. The fruit heats up, and that allows the mold to develop in the fruit. You don't necessarily have to pick out every single leaf in the batch. We do have a de-leafer machine, so we can take care of that for you. But we do ask that you pick out, like, you know, big twiggy branches and sticks and that sort of thing, because Ivan really doesn't like those.
Take care of Ivan and Ivan takes care of you.
That is the thing. Yeah.
How to store the olives.
Yeah, that's a good one. If you have to wait a couple of days before you bring them to it, it's best to actually lay them out on an old sheet or something so that the olives are in like one layer rather than keeping them in a bucket. And if you haven't got the space and you've got to keep them in some sort of container, make sure it's ventilated. Don't just put them in like a solid plastic bucket, because the air needs to circulate to stop that mold growth potential.
And so, okay, although this year I only got 5 olives, say I do get a couple of crates full and bring them to you, but they only equate to, say, 40 kilos.
Yep.
So what can you do to help me be able to enjoy my olive oil?
Yeah.
Even though Ivan needs, you were saying
50 kilos minimum, yeah.
Yes.
So there's a few different options. If we have fruit, then we can pick some for you and add that on as a cost to the batch. We'll add it. We only ever add up to 50 kilos minimum unless you want us to add more of our fruit, because obviously we want it to be your oil, not our oil.
Yeah.
Or we also, with everybody's permission, if we know of another small batch that's coming in that doesn't quite meet standard, then we connect everybody together and we will make that an individual batch of those 2 fruits or 3 fruits or whatever.
So basically you want to make friends with people that have olive trees and then you can press your olive oil together.
People with olive trees are amazing. You should definitely go and meet more people with olive trees.
Olive oil processing is simple, but before crushing the olives, we try to remove as much of the stems as possible that would have fallen into the container through harvesting. And Ceilidh uses this de-leafer, which blows out air that carries away the light leaves and drops the olives into a container. Because this is small batch processing, some producers tend to skip the washing of the olives because it's usually just from local farms or from your backyard. So we're going to go straight into crushing, and in this case it's mechanical, using blades that are going to chop up the olives into a thick paste.
Malaxing is basically just mixing the fruit paste, and as you can see here, the whole fruit's gone in. We've got pips, we've got a few stalks and leaves. You can see how it's starting to get a little bit shiny on the surface?
Yes, I can see
Yeah,
that.
so that's the oil starting to come out already. Add a little bit of water while we're crushing just to wash it through the mill so that we don't get mill stalls in it. The motion helps to kind of break down the cell walls as well and potentially get sort of 20 to 25 kilos off one tree. Now that's half a batch for us. We'll do between 50 and 200 kilos. If you and your neighbour have both got one tree each or whatever, then you can potentially get a batch together. The smaller the batch, the less efficient the extraction is. Because it's a push pump that comes up into the decanter, as soon as you run out of paste in the tank to push, that's it. So what I'm doing here is putting in some enzymes. Yeah. So this enzyme is called pectinase. It's basically the same sort of stuff that you put in jam to make it set, but in this case it actually breaks apart the cell walls of the fruit. Yep. So it releases the oil into the paste. Yeah, some people don't like using them, but they are organic, they don't affect the flavour of the oil, they all come out in the waste because they're not part of that oil component, and so they centrifuge differently. So they're not going to affect the oil as such, they just help to release it from the fruit. The fruit that I just loaded was a variety called Manzanillo. Manzanillo will have anywhere between sort of 8 to 12% yield depending on the year and whether you use enzymes, and to get it closer to that 12% you'd need to use the enzymes definitely. About 11, we'll come back about 12 and see what we've come up with.
Centrifugation is the part where we separate the olive oil from the other parts of the olive. And basically, it's like a big salad spinner. It spins really fast and it pushes the heavy parts, like the pieces of olives, to the outside of the machine. And the lighter parts stay inside, which include the water and the olive oil. And because olive oil is lighter, it floats on top of the water and it's then taken out through special openings made just for the oil to escape and the water's left over.
The oil comes out here and the waste comes out here. So it's quite a runny waste. It's the water and the pomace mixed together. This hose pipe attaches to the waste pump. Yep. Sorry. And I'll get the wheelbarrow. We pump it into the wheelbarrow and then we slap it across the hill to the storage facility there. And what that does is it allows the water to evaporate off the paste so it dries out. Yep. And then the worms come up out of the ground and they actually compost it in situ. Mm-hmm. And then we put it back out on the grove.
And then this has really excited me about to taste the very fresh olive oil, which was actually too strong and it's supposed to sit a little bit before you taste it, so I didn't know how to react.
In terms of sustainability, like you can see, this is some of the cleaner pips here. So you can wash the olive flesh off the pips. There are heaters that you can buy which are called wheat heaters, and rather than burning a food source, it makes more sense to me to burn something like this. It burns really well and it's a really high BTU measurement, which is the British thermal units, which is the calorific content basically. It's a really good fuel source, but also use it instead of gravel for paths and things, which is kind of what's happening here naturally by accident.
So run us through this tasting.
Some olive oil that's fresh off the press. Okay, so initially you would normally do it in a blue glass because that takes the colour, bias out of it. So green oil versus yellow oil. The only difference is when it was actually processed. So how ripe the fruit was is usually what affects the olive oil colour the most. So what we're doing here is we're warming it, so that we can get some of the aromatics coming off the top of the oil. And you keep your hand over the top, obviously, because you want to keep them in. So once you feel like it's warmed a bit, then we give it a sniff. It doesn't have a lot.
I'm waiting for you to say it.
I've got a bit of mint on there.
Oh, so you're supposed to do the slurping, I forgot. Whoops.
And when you've slurped, you breathe out through your nose, because what that does is it gives you the aromatics on the back of your nasal sinuses and also the back of the palate for the flavour.
I think I have to do it again.
Feel free. So you breathe in and you aerate the oil in your mouth. Yep. So do the slurping like you do when you're wine tasting. And then you breathe out through your nose to get some of the aromatics on there. So what I'm getting out of that is kind of a creamy, buttery, it's very mild. There's a little bit of bite.
Bit of nuttiness, is
there?
Yeah,
I was going to say there's a little bit of cashewy kind of flavours in that one. Yeah, it's a very delicate oil that would fall in the delicate categories. Now what we found this year in terms of the harvest and the oil flavours is that even the really unripe green fruit at the start of the season that you would expect to be in that robust category everything is very, very mild this year by comparison.
Is that just because of the growing season?
Conditions, yeah. So what we found is that the wet spring, but it was a cool summer, and so it hasn't had a lot
yes, it was definitely a very cool summer.
Yeah, like we haven't had that heat to develop the polyphenols, which give it that really big, robust flavour.
Thank you. Thanks for watching. I hope you learnt something new, and I'll see you in the next one.
Oh yeah, the insects. They bite your fingers sometimes and they get on your face. So.
Chookies!